You better believe that I saved the best for last. I definitely do. I always do. What's going on, my planting people? I'm Lithius and this is Roots Ready. I've got 5 plants to walk you through today. These plants have made it to my favorites list for June, and there's a couple of reasons for that. And I'll probably talk you through it as we go through. But essentially, most of these plants have gone through a bit of a journey with me where they sort of started to show signs of decline and they've really stepped up their game this summer. So I'm really excited about that. And I'll talk you through a little bit of the care that I give these plants as well. The first plant we're going to talk about today is this one right here. It's just a little baby, but this plant has been in my care for maybe about 2 years. And in that time, it's grown, it's died, it's been propagated, it's died again, it's thrown out leaves, and this is the first time that this plant is actually showing some stable growth. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my Anthurium Regale. I got this plant as a little stump, a little cutting, and when I regrew this plant, it actually had 2 growth points and it looked really good. So I separated them and I had 2 plants. Unfortunately, when I did that, the plant completely declined and started to go downhill. It completely lost its leaves. So what I then did, I popped it in a grow bag, just a Ziploc bag, and I had it in there in moss, I believe, or was it in some sort of semi-hydro mix. It started doing okay, it started to rebound and started to grow some new leaves. I placed the plant whilst it was in the bag on a heat mat, and that completely dried out the plant. And again, it lost all the leaves. The leaves just absolutely melted and there was nothing to show for this plant. And that was quite disappointing. I thought after that, there's going to be no hope for this plant. And I'm telling you, it went back to a complete stomp after that. When I noticed that happened, I took the plant out from where it was. It was kind of just sitting here where it was getting some good light from my grow lights and such during the winter. So I took it out, I had it in a grow bag. I placed it in my grow tent. And after that, my philosophy on this plant was set it and forget it, because I realized that anytime I tried to put in a little bit of effort with this plant, I tried to intervene with its growth, especially in those early stages, that something would go wrong and the plant would just have a meltdown and lose all of its leaves. So I left it in there for the best part of 1.5 years, probably more than that. And I didn't do anything up until maybe about 2 weeks ago, where I took the plant out because it had this amazing growth on it, had some new leaves coming in, and the grow bag that it was in was getting quite tight. So there wasn't a lot of space. The leaves were touching against the bag and it was constantly wet. So at the risk of having fungal issues, I took it out of that bag. I put it in some soil because I realized that some of my anthuriums do prefer soil. So I wanted to try the Regale out in some really chunky Anthurium mix. So you can see that here, that's really chunky. So there's lots and lots of good drainage material in here, but also some retention as well, because these plants don't like to be completely dried out, especially when it comes from a super high environment, high humidity environment. I still have like a plastic dome over this just to maintain a little bit higher humidity, but that's part of my efforts to transition this plant out of a super high humid environment into something a bit more consistent with the way I keep my other anthuriums. So far, so good. There's no signs of wilting. The leaves are still healthy. They were still juvenile when I took them out, and they're still growing with no issues. There's no damage, nothing at all. The plant is looking really healthy. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, but hopefully this is the start of this journey with this plant. This is like the new beginning, because we started, we failed, we started, we failed, and here we are again with this Anthurium Regale looking really regal. And this is why it's the first one on my favorites list in June. The next plant I'm going to talk about is one that I don't really appreciate enough. I really don't. And I have a vision for this plant. This is my string of hearts. Oh my goodness, it's almost getting there. Let me walk you through my vision for this plant. So I've had this plant as a tiny cutting. I think when I first got it, it was probably around 4 to 5 strings, so absolutely tiny. And my vision was always one that I could rival the string of hearts from the Crazy Plant Guy. If you look at his YouTube channel, he has an unstoppable string of hearts. That thing is just massive. It's literally ceiling to floor. And this is similar to what I'm going for here. So as I said, started off as a very relatively small plant. I just kept on cutting the plant up and sticking it back into the main pot until it really started to get a little bit bushy. Then this plant started to grow really, really long, started touching the floor, and I was like, what could I do to make this a little bit more interesting to the viewer when you're looking at this plant? And I said, you know what? I want like a floating ball of string of hearts. So that's exactly what I'm going for here. So whilst this thing is growing, I'm constantly feeding the strings back around itself. And I'm hoping that one day I can have like a disco ball of of string of hearts. Can you imagine? Can you see it? This plant is honestly one of the easiest plants in my collection to care for. It is a very succulent plant. It has these massive sort of tubers that it grows, and here we go. So this is it here. This is a tuber, and there are loads of it across the plant. This plant is also a prolific flowerer. So we can see that it's got some blooms coming in here, and it's all over the plant, and they sort of just come in and then they fall off and then they come in again. You're never without blooms on this plant. These tubers are also really good because what it is a storage mechanism for this plant. It's able to hold on to water for a really, really long time. So I water this plant really whenever I remember. It hangs just here in the corner of this sort of display here, and I constantly forget to water this plant. So sometimes I will go a month, sometimes a month and a half where I've forgotten this plant because I'm focused on all the other plants here that are really sensitive to water. If I miss a beat, the plants will start to decline. But with this, honestly, you treat it like you would something like a cactus or a succulent, and the plant is all right. And what I do is I give it a good deep watering, and I also get the water to sit in the pot, not too much, but maybe like a centimeter or so. And then that then gets absorbed into the soil, so you know that you have a really good saturation there and that there's no sort of dry pockets, air pockets in here. And that method sort of works well for me. And fertilizing, honestly, because I water this plant so infrequently, it's whenever, you know, whatever I have in my spray bottle at the time. So sometimes it will have fertilizer, sometimes it won't. And so far, so good. Look at this thing. I can't wait. I can't wait. We've got some strings down here that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So I can maybe wrap that around itself, something like this. But I'll probably play around with this after the video to see sort of the best way to wrap it around here. But this is it. This is the string of hearts, an incredible plant. If you're looking for something that can just fill out a corner, you know, it's the one for you. Make sure that it gets a lot of light as well, because it certainly likes that. Another thing I'm attempting with this plant is to grow it as a carpet, because in nature it is a carpeting plant as opposed to a vining plant. And in a terrarium that I recently built, I've got this sort of in front, and it's started to carpet quite nicely, slowly but surely. There are other plants that are really competing for space. I have to keep going in and trimming other plants just to give this one enough access to light, so it can do its thing. And this is it, guys. This is the string of hearts. This plant right here has made it to my list because finally it is starting to grow and it's starting to elongate its leaves. This, ladies and gentlemen, is my Anthurium Wendlingeri, whatever it is. It is the famous corkscrew Anthurium. This thing grows some incredible pendant leaves, and that's not its only party trick. As I said, it's got that corkscrew inflorescence that when it matures is the star of the show. That's one of the things that people love about this plant. The reason why I'm showing this plant, and it's really, really tiny, but I got this thing as a seedling. Honestly, this right here, that was the second leaf that this plant produced. The first baby leaf fell off, it died off, as these plants do as they start to grow, and it has been super slow. I've had this plant almost a year now, and it's been the slowest Anthurium I've honestly ever tried to grow from seeding. It's absolutely tiny. And finally, we have signs that it is a Wendlingeri. I can never say that name. I'm gonna stop saying. I'm just gonna say the Wendy, right? I'm gonna call it Anthurium Wendy. We'll leave it as that. When I first got it, I put it in some semi-hydro mix, and I had a sort of a plastic cup over it to keep it in super high humid environment. The plant would actually dry out quite quickly, because although I would leave it in a reservoir, that will quickly evaporate or disappear. The plant will take it up. So I thought, okay, the plant looks like it's quite thirsty, it's quite hungry. I'm fertilizing it well enough, and I thought it would take off, and it just absolutely hasn't. So a couple of weeks ago, around the same time that I changed out the Regale into soil, I did the same with this one as well. And remembering that this is only 2 weeks ago, look at that, we've already got another leaf on the way. Can you see that little tiny speck? That's another leaf. So this plant, I can see that is gonna now start taking off and it's gonna start growing. So I'm really excited, and that's why I've included it on my list today, because finally we have something. This plant, I think, is gonna be one of the showstoppers in my collection, and I absolutely cannot wait. I cannot wait. Especially, you guys know that I love a hybrid. I love to hybridize my Anthuriums. I don't have another pendant shaped Anthurium, but we can see what we can work with. Can it be hybridized with a Forgetii? I don't know, but my Forgetii seems to want to hybridize with anything that it can. So maybe that might be something. I doubt it. Maybe it needs a pendifolium, something similar in leaf shape. But we will see. We will see. I'm really excited to bring you this one. This is the Anthurium Wendlingeri. Another Anthurium that I want to talk you through is this one. This is my Anthurium Forgetii crossed with Luxurians, and look at the texture on this leaf. It's so belate, so bumpy. It usually shows better on camera, sort of at the back of the leaf, but this one you don't really need to do that. You can appreciate it dead on. This plant is something else. I don't own a Luxurians, but I do own two hybrids. I've got this one, which is, as I said, hybridized with a Forgetii, and I've got another one which is hybridized with a Radicans. That Anthurium is not fertile, so although it throws out inflorescence every now and then, you're not able to fertilize it with anything because I think it's sterile. But I'm hoping the case is different with this one, because I would love to either self-pollinate this or try some different kinds of hybrids. I think it would be quite interesting because of just that texture. It's so soft and almost velvety, not as velvety as the Forgetii, but pretty damn close. This thing is gorgeous. The only thing I missed from the Forgetii with this plant is the silver veinage. Can you imagine if this thing had it? It would look crazy, and it'll probably be at the top of my favorites list every single month. But the reason why I brought this one to you guys is because for a while there, it was a bit touch and go. I didn't know where we were going to end up with this plant. When I first got this plant, I was actually quite surprised at the size of it. I ordered it as a seedling and it came and it was quite large. I think the first leaf has gone, but this was like the second leaf that came, so it was similar in size to this. And I had it growing in a semi-hydro mix, as I do with a lot of my Anthuriums, and it was not doing that great, to be honest with you. You can see that the leaves started to sort of yellow, turn into that lime green kind of color. Even at times, it started to show some sort of signs of distress here. That could either be, you know, lack of ventilation. So I made sure that it was close to the fan. I do grow it in my tent over here, and it has a fan in there, so get that circulation nice and high. And then I moved it from semi-hydro into soil, and this is the Soil Ninja mix. So definitely check out the link in my description below if you want to get your hands on some. You can get a 20% discount from there. And since then, the plant has stabilized. So this is the first leaf that came out afterwards. It looks so much healthier, so lovely and dark, and it finally starts to look like what it should. And then it gave me this beauty. Now this thing is lovely now, but oh my goodness, when this plant first starts growing, it's got this deep red maroon color, and honestly, it's a showstopper. It's like this massive pop of color amongst a lot of green in our collection. So I was really glad to sort of have something looking so interesting, so different in my collection. And yeah, I mean, gosh, look at it. It's absolutely gorgeous, really gorgeous. So I'm hoping that now it's in a type of soil that it's showing that it really likes. And even then, look at that, we got some roots popping up at the bottom. It's only been in soil for maybe a month or month and a half, not that long, and it's showing that it's really liking that. So yeah, it had to be added to this list because of, oh, look at that, just the texture. It's just so gorgeous. It's so lovely. Oh my goodness. You better believe that I saved the best for last. I definitely do. I always do. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is my Philodendron Gloriosum. This is the exact same Philodendron Gloriosum that was giving me a headache when I had it growing together with a pastazanum in that long pot. Remember, it was massive, and the plants just started to die. Like, they came down with spider mites. It was kicking my rear. I'm telling you, this plant completely suffered. And I tried so many things. I took it from leca, I put it into soil. That didn't work. In fact, it made it worse. And I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna bite the bullet. I'm gonna just take the plants out. I'm gonna restart all of them. I'll chop them up into tiny pieces. I've got some still propagating, but this one showed up first and it didn't come to play, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the variegation on this leaf. Oh my goodness. I don't know if the variegation is gonna last. I don't know if this is the only leaf that's gonna come out with variegation. I hope not. I hope that I have a whole new variegated vine here and we can promote that. But oh my goodness, I have to enjoy it. Look at this thing. And you know the worst part is, right? This thing was growing. I noticed that it had a leaf on it. I was like, okay, it's a Gloriosum. You know, I've seen it before. I had the plant. Not gonna get too excited in case I lose it. And the leaf was kind of facing away from me. So it was kind of like this. And as I was going through, just sort of looking at my plants, I pulled it. And oh my goodness, I was like, what? Variegation? You know, I love variegation. Variegated plants are always at the top of my list. And oh my goodness, oh my days. Fingers crossed that this isn't just a fluke. I hope that I can have a whole massive plant that is variegated, because oh my God, how incredible would that be? How incredible. You know what? I've said enough about this, but I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to leave you to enjoy this leaf for a moment. The Philodendron Gloriosum. What a gem. Oh my goodness. But that's it. Those are the top 5 plants for the month of June. I am so interested to know what your top 5 plants are as well. So let me know in the comments below. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, keep planting.